In light of 3 hard-hitting reports in as many weeks, and the best we can get from the government is mockery. Well, at least Minister Joyce has moved away from his laminated cards for one small moment to spend a little time talking about a party that actually has an economic plan, because we have seen an absolute failure from that side of the House to adequately respond to the needs of New Zealand families that have been highlighted from reports as diverse as the Ministry of Social Development's own report on household incomes in New Zealand, which has shown that material deprivation under that government has moved from 15 to 21%. That is the inability of families to do basic things like go to the doctor, like fill their prescriptions, like keep their homes warm. But if they choose to use another measure, and this is a controversial point for this side of the House because measurement isn't something they would like us to focus on, if they chose another measure such as income, on a basic measure as to whether or not New Zealanders have enough income to survive, 25% of our children are now living in poverty. That is an absolute disgrace. But not only is it a disgrace, Mr. Speaker, it is costing us dearly. So as much as that government claims that we don't have the money to address this issue, we actually can't afford not to. Infometrics tells us that we are spending, Mr. Sabin, we are spending $6 billion per annum on children getting a poor start in life. If that government wants to save money for taxpayers, the best thing it could do is address underinvestment in our most vulnerable children. And we are underinvesting. We spend roughly half of what the OECD does on our smallest, most vulnerable children. And we pay the price of that. And we pay it poorly, because not only do other OECD nations pay just a little bit more than us, they get much better outcomes. So what is my challenge to that government? Don't ignore the facts. That government stands up and says that simply by moving people into work, problems solved. Well, let's look at how they've done that. Welfare reforms, which actually won't even on their best estimate get welfare numbers down to the level that this government left them in. That Labour-winning government left welfare in a better state than that government's even aspiring to. 17,000 on an unemployment benefit versus 50,000 now. And your own targets aren't even aspirational enough to get it back there. So A, welfare reforms aren't alone going to solve it. B, being in work is enough? Not according to the statistics. 2 out of 5 children in poverty are already in the homes of the working poor. That means that that government's focus on getting people into work isn't even enough for people to survive these days, even with 2 families in work. Wages are disgracefully low in this country, and that government claims that job creation and its economic growth strategy is helping working New Zealand families. Do you know how it helped, Mr. Sabin? In the past 3 years, poverty went static. The middle went backwards. Those on high incomes went up. That wasn't the global financial crisis, Mr. Sabin. That was an economic policy that was focused on 2 things: trickle down and tax cuts for those who didn't need them. That was your economic plan, and our children are paying for that, Mr. Sabin. So what else has the government proposed? It's proposed immunisation, insulation, and at best maybe it might consider lunches in schools. These are short-term solutions to long-term problems. That government does not want to acknowledge that rheumatic fever won't be fixed by swabbing. It'll be fixed by decent, warm houses. And you're doing nothing on that, Mr. Sabin. That immunisation actually is just as putting moving the ambulance around at the bottom of the cliff, Mr. Speaker. We've got to get to the root cause of the issue, and that is something that this government does not want to do. Mr. Speaker, this Labour opposition in the last election put forward a comprehensive policy on children. We proposed many of the things that the Expert Advisory Committee on Children has proposed. And we, Mr. Speaker, are not afraid to continue promoting on behalf of those most vulnerable in New Zealand. We'll start with a target to reduce child poverty. We are ambitious, we have unfinished business, and we will see it completed under a Labour government.
The Honourable Chester Borrows.